After 30 years of quiet loyalty, the office let me go with a thin severance check and a lukewarm goodbye. I didn't cry. I just went home and stared at the bills. For the first time in my life, I needed help. And I needed it from my son. I only asked for what I had once given. But when I saw his eyes dart sideways, I knew the answer before his mouth moved. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. The house creaked more these days, wood settling, wind pressing through aging window frames. I told myself it was just October doing what October does, but deep down, I knew the bones of this home were giving out the same way mine were. I'd been up since dawn, couldn't sleep knowing Daniel was coming. Not for a celebration, not for a holiday. Just tea. And a conversation I didn't want to have. I set the table with mismatched china we hadn't used in years, polished the silverware, baked a small lemon pound cake, his favorite since he was 5, when he used to lick the bowl and grin up at me like I was magic. He called it cloud cake. Now, I wasn't sure he remembered it at all. Daniel, my son, my only child, walked in exactly 17 minutes late. He didn't apologize, just kissed my cheek in that absent automatic way, like muscle memory from a more affectionate past. He looked good. Expensive haircut, crisp shirt, watch that glinted under the kitchen light. He smelled faintly of cologne and car leather. It made me feel suddenly aware of my faded cardigan and the softness of my socks. "Hey, Ma," he said, smiling as he sat down. "What's the occasion?" He didn't notice the fresh flowers I'd picked from the back garden, or the cake, or the way my hands trembled a little as I poured his tea. "No occasion," I said. "I just wanted to talk, face to face." His phone vibrated against the table. He flipped it over, ignoring it, but not without glancing at the screen first. I sipped my tea, stalling. "The roof's leaking again," I finally said. "Worse than before." He frowned. "Still?" "The contractor says it'll need full replacement. 12,000, give or take. Insurance won't cover it. And..." I folded the napkin in my lap, smoothed it twice. "I tried applying for a loan, but at my age, and fixed income, well, you know how it is." Daniel shifted in his chair. I watched his jaw tighten, his fingers tapping softly on the table's edge. "I wouldn't ask," I said gently. "You know I wouldn't, Daniel. But..." "Mama," he interrupted, voice soft but firm. "You know if I could, I would. But we're kinda stretched right now. IVF payments, some house debt, and Alyssa's starting grad school next semester. It's been a lot." I nodded too quickly, too eagerly. "Of course, I completely understand." But I didn't. Not really. He reached for his tea, but didn't drink it. "Maybe give it a few months, and we'll figure something out." I wanted to ask him, "Didn't I help you when you totaled your car at 23? Didn't I co-sign the lease for your first apartment when your credit was short? Didn't I give you everything I had after your father died? Time, energy, my sanity, so you could grieve without worrying about bills?" But I said nothing. I smiled instead. "No rush, sweetheart. Just thought I'd ask." He stood to leave a minute later, hugged me lightly. Said he had to swing by the dealership for something, a routine check on Alyssa's car. I nodded, still smiling. When the door closed behind him, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, feeling the air settle into silence. That night, as I was washing the dishes, my phone buzzed. It was Terry from next door. "Look who just drove this off the lot today. Fancy?" I opened the photo. Daniel. Standing beside a brand new black SUV, beaming. One hand on the hood, the other around Alyssa, who held the key fob like a trophy. Behind them, a giant red bow glistened on the windshield. I brought blueberry scones, warm from my oven, wrapped in the dish towel with the little bluebirds stitched along the hem. Alyssa always said she loved them. She opened the door with that polished, curated smile, the kind that said, "Photo ready," more than "genuinely glad to see you." Her long, dark hair was pinned back in a style that looked casual, but cost at least $90 at a salon. She wore cashmere, light gray, and not a hair was out of place. "Margaret, what a surprise," she said, stepping aside just enough to let me in. I crossed the threshold of their spotless, freshly remodeled foyer and handed her the bundle. I thought I'd drop off some scones. Oh, thank you. Daniel's at work, she added quickly, like a disclaimer. That's all right, I replied. I came to see you, actually. Her brows lifted slightly, but she nodded, leading me into the open-concept kitchen. White marble counters, under-cabinet lighting, a fruit bowl of perfect oranges and avocados. She set the scones down and filled the kettle without asking if I wanted tea. The silence curled between us like steam. She poured the tea without meeting my eyes. I noticed the new diamond on her finger. From where I sat, I could see the car. The car, parked in the driveway, gleaming, new. Its reflection shimmered in the glass sliding doors. I cleared my throat. That's a lovely car. Congratulations. Alyssa glanced toward it and smiled, her tone light but pride seeping through. Thank you. Daniel surprised me. Said I deserved something reliable before grad school starts. I let out a polite hum and took the porcelain cup she handed me. No sugar, no milk. She didn't ask how I liked it. I'd only been in their home a dozen times. I suppose it was time, I said. The old car wasn't giving trouble, though? No. It was fine, she said with a shrug. This one's just better. That word, better, echoed a little too loud in my head. The silence returned. I looked around, let my eyes settle on the subtle upgrades. The chandelier above the table hadn't been there last Christmas. The dining chairs were new. A large flat-screen TV now hung above the fireplace. Everything screamed, "We're doing well." And yet, just 3 days ago, Daniel had told me he couldn't help with my roof. I sipped the tea. Bitter. Too strong. You both seem to be doing well, I said carefully. Alyssa set her cup down with a soft clink. Daniel's father made sure of that, she said. My stomach turned. I'm sorry? I asked, trying to sound casual. She blinked at me like I should know. I mean, the trust, the one he left for Daniel. It matured last year. It was such a blessing. Honestly. I felt every word like a crack in the floor beneath me. I kept my face still. Years of motherhood taught me how to do that. Yes, I said, voice dry. David always wanted to make sure Daniel had something for his future. Alyssa smiled. He did, and Daniel's worked so hard too. He deserves it. There it was, again. Deserves. Alyssa glanced at her phone. I've got a webinar in 10 minutes, she said, not unkindly but definitively. But I hope you like the tea. I stood slowly, setting my cup down untouched. Of course, I'll let you get to it. She walked me to the door and didn't ask when I'd visit next. On the porch, I paused and looked back at the car once more. The sun caught its curve just right, like it was mocking me, or daring me. And then I saw it. In the glove box, visible through the windshield, a small, crumpled piece of paper. The same contractor estimate I'd handed Daniel 5 days ago. Folded in half. Jammed beneath the vehicle manual. The car door shut behind me with a soft click, and for a moment, I just sat in the driver's seat staring at the wheel, hands resting in my lap like they didn't belong to me. My reflection in the rearview mirror was too sharp, too pale, the lines on my face deeper than they'd seemed this morning. I turned the mirror away. I tried to start the engine. Hand moved to the keys, but I stopped. The air inside the car felt too still, too full. And then it happened. The tears came slowly at first, like a slow leak from something cracked inside me. One rolled over my cheek, then another, until I was gasping, fists clenched in my lap, choking on something too big to name. It wasn't just about the money. Not really. It was the way Alyssa hadn't looked me in the eye. It was the way Daniel didn't call after he left. It was the trust fund David never told me about. It was the scones on her counter, untouched. It was the tea, bitter. It was the paper, folded and shoved into a glove box like a dead thing. It was the realization, sharp and sudden, that I wasn't needed anymore. That all my sacrifices had grown legs and walked away, dressed in designer polo shirts and cashmere. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and whispered, I raised him better than this. But maybe I didn't. Maybe I raised him exactly like this. And that was the hardest thought of all. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I moved through the quiet like a ghost, shrugging off my coat, slipping out of my shoes, and sitting on the old floral love seat that still smelled faintly of furniture polish and time. The tears had dried, but something else had taken their place. Not anger, exactly. Not yet. More like a quiet clench, the kind of tension you feel in your teeth after a night of grinding dreams. The roof dripped softly in the hallway. A slow, irritating tap. I should have been thinking about how to fix it. Instead, I stared at the bookshelves. At the bottom was an old wooden box, the one David always kept locked. I'd dusted around it for 20 years. I don't know what moved me that night. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe something darker. I took the key from behind the framed wedding photo, the one we took by the lake in 1983. David in his pressed gray suit, me in a simple white dress, both of us squinting into a future we thought we understood. The box opened with a gentle resistance, like it didn't want to give up what it held. Inside were files, yellowed envelopes, a couple of typed letters with fading ink. One letter was from David's attorney, dated 4 months before his heart attack. As per your instructions, the trust will be released to Daniel upon his 33rd birthday. Margaret does not need to be involved unless something changes. I've filed everything under client reference 78 MHD. Another envelope held something stranger, a printout of a bank statement with Daniel's name on it. From a bank in upstate New York, numbers I didn't recognize, but they weren't small. There was also a letter, handwritten. David's script was neat, almost too careful. If you're reading this, I suppose I'm gone. I wanted you to know I left Daniel something. I never told you, because I didn't want to give you one more thing to worry about. You always carried the hard parts. You still do. But he'll be okay now. We both know he's never really been strong with money. This will give him a chance. Don't be angry. I wasn't angry. I was hollow. He left it all for Daniel, without telling me, after everything I'd done to keep this house standing, after putting off my own needs, selling off jewelry, turning down travel, skipping health appointments, to make sure our son didn't feel the gaps. I clutched the letter to my chest and let the silence fill me. Later that night, I called Linda, my old friend from when I worked at the registrar's office. She picked up on the third ring, her voice sleepy but warm. Margaret, everything okay? I need a favor, I said, trying to keep my voice from trembling. Do you still have access to the archives at Riverway Credit Union? There was a pause. Technically no, but I can try. What are you looking for? An old account, I said. Something my husband opened before he died. I think Daniel's been using it. Another pause. Maggie, is everything all right? I stared at the letter on my lap. I'm not sure anymore. I hung up, folded the paper back into the envelope, and sat back in my chair. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't tired. I was alert, clear. Somewhere along the line, I had stopped asking questions, stopped digging, stopped being the woman who used to balance a checkbook like her life depended on it. But she was still in there, under the grief, under the gray hair and soft sweaters. She was waking up now. I didn't call ahead. It wasn't a spontaneous decision. I rehearsed it all night in my head. What to say, what not to say, how to keep my face still, my voice even. I just showed up at their house at 10:12 a.m. on a Thursday with a tin of oatmeal cookies and a cardigan draped over my arm. The cardigan was a prop. So was the tin. Daniel opened the door, shirt wrinkled, phone still pressed to his ear. He raised a finger. Hold on. Then turned back into the hallway, muttering something about final numbers and pushing back the deadline. He left me standing on the welcome mat for nearly a full minute. When he finally came back, he smiled like nothing was wrong. Hey, Ma, sorry. Morning chaos? You should have called first. I didn't want to interrupt, I said, stepping inside. Is everything all right? He asked, glancing at the tin. You didn't need to bring anything. I was in the area, I lied. Thought I'd drop off some cookies. You still like oatmeal raisin, don't you? He gave a lazy grin. Of course. You kidding? But he set the tin on the counter without opening it. I could see the car through the kitchen window now. A black SUV so shiny it looked like ink poured into metal. The kind of vehicle that came with its own financing plan and status symbol. "New car suits you?" I said casually. Daniel followed my gaze. "Yeah, Alyssa's old one was on its last legs. Must have cost a fortune." He shrugged. "We got a good deal, and hey, safety comes first, right?" "Of course," I smiled. "Safety is everything." We sat at the breakfast bar. He scrolled his phone between half-interested glances at my conversation. I asked about work. He gave vague answers. I asked about Alyssa's classes. He deflected to her schedule. It felt like trying to talk to someone through a screen door. Always slightly muffled. Always one barrier between what you ask and what they give. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded slip of paper. The contractor's estimate. The one I had handed him last week. "I thought I lost this," I said, placing it gently on the counter. "But then I realized I gave it to you." He looked at it, then looked at me. There was a flicker. Not guilt, just calculation. "You did," he said. I forgot I had it." "You forgot," I repeated. He nodded, a little too fast. "Yeah, everything's been hectic lately. Honestly, Ma, I've had it on my list to follow up. We just didn't expect the car situation to come up so soon." "But you remembered to sign the loan for the SUV," I said softly. Daniel's eyes sharpened. "What are you trying to say?" I took a breath. "Nothing. I'm just trying to understand why I'm patching my roof with buckets while you're buying luxury vehicles." There it was, a line drawn, quietly but firmly. He stood, moving to the fridge. "Look, I told you, it's not a good time, and this feels like you're making me feel guilty." "I'm asking for honesty," I said. "Not guilt." He grabbed a bottle of water and twisted the cap too hard. Then he changed the subject. Asked if I'd watched that new Netflix thing about the kid who scams his parents. A poor attempt at deflection. But I played along. I even laughed once. But inside, I felt it, the part of me that used to believe in him starting to let go. As I walked out, I paused in the driveway. The car sat there, proud, spotless, untouched by dirt or struggle. I leaned down just slightly to peer into the front seat. The glove box was open. There, crammed under a pile of manuals, was the contractor's estimate. Folded twice, then shoved in like trash. Not forgotten, dismissed. I cooked for them. I smiled. I set the table like it was a holiday. But everything tasted like metal. I roasted a chicken the way David used to like it. Lemon, garlic, rosemary under the skin. Even though he'd been dead 13 years, and Daniel never really cared for rosemary. I made mashed potatoes from scratch, not the boxed ones. Set the table with real napkins, the linen ones I kept for birthdays and holidays. Pulled the crystal glasses from the back cabinet, the ones Daniel once asked me not to use because they're too fussy. This time, I wanted them to feel fussy. Alyssa brought a bottle of wine, French, dry, the kind you need to pretend to enjoy. She complimented the table, told me the chicken smelled divine. Daniel barely looked at me when he sat down. We ate like strangers. I asked polite questions. How was work? How were classes? What were their weekend plans? They answered in phrases, not stories. At one point, Daniel started telling a story about the dealership and how a woman tried to return a car after her husband got caught cheating in it. I laughed along, but something about the way he said it, casual, dismissive, made me taste ash in my mouth. Alyssa glanced at her phone once, texting under the table. Daniel saw. Said nothing. When dinner was nearly done, I placed my fork down and cleared my throat. "There's something I'd like to ask," I said. Daniel looked up. Alyssa took a sip of wine. "That trust fund," I said. "The one your father left you. Why didn't you tell me about it?" The fork in Daniel's hand froze. Alyssa blinked. "I found the paperwork," I added. "In his box. And I've spoken to someone at Riverway. The fund matured last year." Daniel leaned back, breathing through his nose. "I wasn't hiding it," he said. "I just didn't think it was relevant." "Not relevant?" I repeated, barely able to believe the words. "You asked for money," he said. You didn't ask about my finances? So the answer wasn't, I can't. It was, I won't. Daniel's face hardened. It's not that simple. Mom? Alyssa stared into her wine glass like it might offer a distraction or a place to hide. I've sacrificed for you, I said, louder than I meant. Your father and I gave you everything. I went without for years, and all I asked for was help with a roof. Not a car, not tuition, not Europe, just a roof, the one that protected you for half your life. He looked away. I thought we were family, I whispered. We are, he said, but it sounded rehearsed. Cold. Alyssa opened her mouth, then closed it again. Why would Dad do that? I said. Why would he leave you money and not even tell me? Daniel looked up then, just for a second, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't guilt. It was ownership, like he'd always known, and had simply decided it was his. I don't know, he said flatly. Maybe he didn't trust you to leave it alone. The room went quiet. The chicken steamed gently on the platter between us. The candles flickered. Somewhere down the hall, a faucet dripped. Alyssa stood first. Thank you for dinner, she said quietly. Daniel stood second. Didn't say thank you. As they walked to the door, I followed, but before he stepped outside, he turned back. I'm not the bad guy here, Mom, he said. You're just mad I finally learned to put myself first. And then he was gone. I cleared the plates, scraped food into the bin, washed the dishes by hand like always. When I opened the dishwasher to load the wine glasses, I saw it sitting inside, an unopened tin of oatmeal cookies, still sealed, still untouched, just like everything else I'd offered. Margaret realizes that not only did Daniel lie about not being able to help, her late husband secretly left Daniel a trust fund behind her back. By Monday morning, I was no longer sad. I was surgical. I dressed in soft gray slacks, a clean blouse, and the pearl earrings David gave me on our 10th anniversary. Not because I needed to look nice, but because I needed to look harmless. It's amazing how much you can get from people when they think you're just a sweet, aging woman asking silly questions. Riverway Credit Union had changed a lot since I worked there 25 years ago. Sleeker design, touchscreens. Nobody remembered me, except Linda. She met me in the back hallway by the maintenance door, still wearing her badge, still with that chain of reading glasses hanging around her neck like a no-nonsense necklace. You're lucky I'm still on the inside, she whispered, handing me a folder. This is as far as I go, Margaret. I clutched it like gold. Thank you. I didn't see it, she said, already turning away. Back home, I locked the front door, made tea, and opened the folder. Bank statements, a series of monthly transfers, all under an account labeled with Daniel's name. But something strange about the address. It was my address, not his, mine. From 2017 to 2022, Daniel had received monthly deposits into an account that was technically joint, and had used my home address for all official correspondence. The signature on the account opening form? Margaret E. Hayes. But it wasn't my handwriting. I stared at it for a long time. My own name, twisted, like a forgery done by someone who knew how I looped my H, but didn't care to get it right. He'd used my name. I called the bank. I disguised it as a routine verification call. Claimed I was getting old and couldn't remember whether I'd ever authorized a second account. The woman on the other end was polite. Too polite. Yes, ma'am, you're listed as the co-owner. The file shows dual authorization, dated March 2017. Do you want us to resend the paperwork? No, I said quietly. I just needed to double-check. Thank you. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Daniel had opened the account when he was still in graduate school. Around the same time, I loaned him $8,000 for tuition and told him not to worry about paying it back. He didn't pay it back. He used me to access a fund from his father, then used my house as his mail drop, then used my name to hide it. I wasn't just being lied to. I was being used. Repeatedly, legally, financially. And I'd smiled through it. I opened my file drawer and dug out my old check registers, tax statements, social security letters. I needed to see the whole map. And I needed it fast. Because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft. That night, I sat on the porch with the paperwork spread around me, the breeze tugging at the corners like it wanted to warn me. I remembered helping Daniel apply for his first debit card. I remembered teaching him to sign his name with confidence. I remembered saying, "We don't lie about money in this house." Apparently, he remembered none of it. There was a time he cried into my neck. Now he barely looks me in the eye. I once called him my shadow. He'd follow me from room to room when he was little, clutching the hem of my shirt, asking impossible questions about stars. Or where dogs go when they die. Or why some kids have two moms. He had a gentle voice, an anxious heart, a tendency to cry when other people were hurt. I used to joke that he got my softness, not David's steel. I don't joke like that anymore. I sat in the armchair with all the papers fanned out around me like fallen leaves. Statements, old checks, correspondence. And one photo I hadn't looked at in years. Daniel on his 12th birthday, frosting on his cheek, holding a Lego set we couldn't afford but bought anyway. I tried to picture the boy and the man. Tried to hear his laugh without hearing the dismissiveness behind it now. Tried to feel love without touching disappointment. But it was all tangled. Who had taught him that lying could be done with a smile? That silence could be a shield? That money, when hidden well enough, became harmless? Me? Or had he always had it in him? There are things mothers do that feel like love at the time. You bail them out. You cover. You make excuses at PTA meetings. You give up your own shoes so they can have better ones. You sell your mother's locket to pay for guitar lessons they quit 6 weeks later. You don't know when the line crosses from nurturing into enabling. You don't feel it until the roof leaks and they won't lift a finger. I found myself doing it again, still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, still wondering, maybe he didn't mean to. Maybe he just panicked. But then I remembered the forged signature, the hidden account, the estimate stuffed into the glove box like garbage. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email from the financial advisor David used to work with, a man named Hal Bernstein. I typed and deleted the message 3 times before finally sending. "Hal, I need to know exactly what my husband left behind, and what my son's been pulling from it. Margaret Hayes." Then I sat in silence. The kind that feels thicker than noise. Daniel once said, when he was 17 and we'd had a fight over curfew, "You always act like you don't trust me, but I'm not Dad. I don't control everything." Funny now. He was David in all the wrong ways. The secrecy. The pride. The belief that women should manage feelings while men manage the world. But I wasn't that woman anymore, and he wasn't a boy. I picked up the photo again. I looked into that young face, the smile, the frosting on the cheek. "I miss you," I whispered. Not to the man in the present, to the boy he used to be. The last time Alyssa and I spoke alone, truly alone, was the day after their wedding. We were in the powder room of the reception hall. She was reapplying lipstick, me washing mascara smudges from under my eyes. She looked radiant. I looked tired. "You raised a good man," she said, smiling into the mirror. "You must be proud." At the time, I thought she meant it. Now, I wonder if it was a warning. I called her that Saturday morning and said I needed help with the dryer. A lie. But an easy one. She arrived wearing yoga clothes and no makeup, holding an almond milk latte and her phone. Her smile was thin. I had no intention of talking about dryers. We sat on the back porch. A gentle breeze moved through the dying hydrangeas. "I wanted to ask you something," I began. "Off the record." She sipped her coffee. "Okay. Did you know Daniel was using my name on his bank accounts?" There was no reaction. Just stillness. "I'm sorry?" she asked, voice careful. I leaned forward. "Don't do that, Alyssa. Don't pretend you didn't know." She looked down at her cup. "He said it was just temporary, to keep things simple." "Simple for who?" I asked. "Not me." A pause. Then she met my eyes. Finally. and something cold passed between us. You know what he's like, Margaret. He hates mess, hates confrontation. Sometimes he makes decisions before he thinks. No, I said softly. He makes decisions knowing people like us will clean up after him. She didn't respond to that. Instead, she crossed her legs and looked back toward the driveway. I didn't know about the trust fund until after we got married, she said. David left it for Daniel, said it was his responsibility now. And Daniel interpreted that as what? Free rein to lie? Her jaw tightened. Did you encourage him? I asked. Did you push him? She laughed, bitter, quick. You think I'm the one pulling strings? Daniel doesn't listen to people. He performs for them. Her words hung in the air, unsettling. I told him to help you, she added. He said it was complicated, that you'd make it emotional. And it's not? Everything's emotional with you, Margaret. I stood then, slowly. That boy loved me once, I said. I'm not crazy for expecting some of that love to return now that I need it. She stood too. He still loves you. No, I said. He loves the version of me that gave everything and asked for nothing. She didn't argue. Instead, she walked back inside without saying goodbye. Later that afternoon, I checked the security camera on my front porch, the one Daniel insisted I get for safety last Christmas. I scrolled back through footage from the past week, and there she was. Alyssa, alone, entering my house with a key while I was out getting groceries. She walked to the dining room, opened my file drawer, pulled something out, put it in her purse, and left. The attic smelled like dust and old paper. I hadn't climbed the ladder in 5 years. Maybe more. I took it slowly, one step at a time, knees creaking in protest. Up here, everything felt forgotten. Boxes of childhood toys, Christmas decorations, a rocking horse with one eye missing. My life in fragments. I opened the cedar chest that used to sit in our bedroom before David died. It had been moved up here by Daniel. To clear space, he'd said. Funny now. Inside, David's old briefcase, a stack of savings bonds, our wedding invitation, and a blue ledger wrapped in plastic. The ledger was heavier than I remembered. Handwritten, neat, numbers, dates, notes scribbled in David's careful hand. It wasn't just household budgeting, it was records. Payments to 78 MHD. Transfers marked as trust rebalancing. Notes like, D will manage this solo. Keep M stress-free. I felt my mouth go dry. He had planned it all, years in advance. Not maliciously, perhaps, but arrogantly. He thought I couldn't handle the pressure, that I didn't need to know, that I was only meant to support. Even in love, he kept the math to himself. The trust fund, the accounts, the silence. It wasn't just Daniel's betrayal. It had started with David. And then I found the envelope. Not marked, not sealed. Inside was a single page, a notarized document from 2016, a power of attorney, signed by me, dated 4 months after my surgery, but I had no memory of ever signing it. Below the signature was a witness line, Daniel Hayes. I sat down, hard, on the old storage trunk beside me. It wasn't just that Daniel had forged my name on one account. He had used a vulnerable time, post-surgery, medicated foggy, to file legal documents in my name, giving himself the right to act on my behalf. I had taught him to tie his shoes. He had taught himself to tie knots in my trust. I stayed in the attic for hours, staring at the papers, the writing, the signature that looked like mine but wasn't. I thought about the man I married, the boy I raised. Both had spoken about protection. Both had written me out of the truth. As the sun dipped low and shadows lengthened across the floorboards, I whispered to the air around me, David, you protected him from consequences, and now I have to clean it up. Again. But not like before. Not this time. That night, I laid every document out on the dining table. I circled signatures, drew lines between years and patterns, built a map of deception. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a witness, a victim. And, if I had my way, the reckoning that was long overdue. The tape recorder was small. Old. The kind David once used in meetings back when people still dictated things. I found it in a drawer in the den, next to expired batteries and a tin of buttons. I tested it. Still worked. Still clear. I told Daniel I wanted to talk. Said I was letting everything go. Water under the bridge, I'd said. Let's have tea and try again. He agreed too quickly. I tucked the recorder in my pocket, hit record, and made a pot of Earl Grey. He arrived with that grin he wears when he's gotten away with something. Kissed my cheek. Commented on the curtains I hadn't changed in 10 years. We sat in the living room like polite strangers. I let the silence build. Then I began. I went up into the attic. Daniel froze mid-sip. I found Dad's ledger, I continued, and a power of attorney form from 2016, signed by me. Daniel blinked, forced a smile. You don't remember signing it? No. You had just come out of surgery, he said. We had to make fast decisions. You said it was fine. I said that? You were a little out of it, he said. But you nodded. I remember. I nodded now, slowly, as if agreeing. And you didn't think to bring it up again after I recovered? Daniel leaned back. I didn't think it mattered. There it was. The shift. He wasn't denying. He was owning it. In that slippery way he always had, skating between memory and manipulation. You've always said I don't step up, he said, almost defensively. So I stepped up. I made sure the money was handled. Dad didn't want you stressing. I honored that. You honored it by taking control, I said. He didn't flinch. Someone had to. He went on, about pressure, about being the only child, about how hard things had been in grad school. He sounded tired, righteous, indignant. And then he said it. You always think love means giving up control. I think it means knowing when to take it. The room went still. I reached into my pocket and turned the recorder off. Then set it on the table between us. Daniel's face drained. What's that? I needed to remember how you really talk, I said. Not just how you perform when you want something. He stood. That's illegal. So is forging your mother's name? I said. We stared at each other for a long, brittle moment. Are you going to the police? He asked finally. No, I said. Not yet. He nodded, straightened his shirt, that business school posture coming back. You're angry, I get it, but don't ruin everything over a misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding, Daniel. This is the culmination of a very long story. His lips thinned. You're making this personal. I am your mother, I said. It's always been personal. He left without finishing his tea, and I sat there, hands still, heart hammering, because now I had proof. His voice. His words. His legacy. Margaret gets Daniel on record admitting to forging her name and manipulating her post-surgery, shifting the conflict from emotional to legal. The next morning, I couldn't move. I sat at the kitchen table with my hands folded in front of me, staring at the same mug of cold coffee for 2 hours. The tape recorder was beside it, still full of his voice. Calm, calculated, confident. I could report him. I could take the recording to the bank, to the police, to court. But before any of that, I had to ask myself something I'd spent my whole life avoiding. How much of him came from me? When Daniel was 5, he pushed another boy down the stairs at daycare. The teacher called me, said it wasn't aggressive, more like a calculated little test. When I asked Daniel why he did it, he said, I wanted to see what would happen if he couldn't go first all the time. He didn't cry. He didn't lie. But I still told the teacher it was a misunderstanding. I told myself he was just bright, not manipulative, not cold, just advanced. When he was 12, he stole from the church donation box, bought comic books and a new watch. I found the bills hidden in a shoebox. He cried that time. A lot. Said he was sorry, that he didn't know what he was doing, that he was scared. I didn't punish him. I covered it, wrote a check to the church, told him, We all make mistakes. What I should have said was, "This is how it starts." I thought I was protecting him from the world. What I was doing was protecting him from consequences. And now, at 34, he had no concept of shame. Because I had always made sure shame never stuck to him, I pulled out my journal. Not the one I kept in the kitchen. The real one. The one I wrote in when I didn't want anyone, not even God, to hear me. Page after page. I thought I was raising someone who would care for others. I raised someone who only looks out for himself. David gave him the money. I gave him the armor. He thinks control is love because I kept giving him control every time I wanted to keep his love. I wrote until the words blurred, until my pen ran out, until I couldn't breathe. Then I tore the pages out and burned them in the sink, because some truths aren't meant to be reread. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Alyssa on my porch. No makeup, hair undone, sweater buttoned wrong, hands trembling. "I need to talk," she said. She sat on the edge of my couch like someone waiting for bad news. "I listened to the tape," she said. "He left it playing in his briefcase. I wasn't supposed to hear it." I said nothing. She continued. "You were right. About everything. I knew bits and pieces. But I didn't know he'd forged your name. That he used your surgery. That he calculated it like that." I crossed my arms. "Why are you here, Alyssa?" She looked up, and this time, she didn't look like the ice queen from the kitchen with the French wine. She looked like a woman trying not to drown. "I'm leaving him," she whispered. "But I don't want to go quietly." She reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. "Bank records, voice memos, screenshots, everything. He used my name too, to open a crypto account. Hid it from both of us." My heart didn't race. It slowed. Like time was finally letting me catch up. "Why give this to me?" I asked. Alyssa exhaled. "Because if I'm going down, I want the right person holding the torch." She came not as my daughter-in-law, but as a woman betrayed too. We sat side by side in the lawyer's office like two women at a funeral. Not grieving Daniel, grieving the parts of ourselves we'd handed to him and never gotten back. Alyssa had barely spoken in the car. She clutched her bag like it held secrets that could detonate. And maybe it did. The lawyer, Michelle Wong, was calm, kind-eyed, mid-40s, sharp. The kind of woman who knew how to handle messy without flinching. She flipped through the flash drive's contents on her laptop. She didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She just nodded. "You have a case," she said. "Both of you." I stared at the photos on the screen. Screenshots of Daniel transferring money from accounts with my forged signature. Venmo receipts from Alyssa's linked card. Crypto exchanges in his name. Funded by our names. Every file was a betrayal. Every number a slap I hadn't seen coming. "He didn't just betray you, Margaret," Michelle said. "He committed fraud." I breathed out slowly. "What happens if we press charges?" "He faces legal consequences. Fines, potential jail time, public records. This isn't a small thing." Alyssa shifted. "And if we don't?" "You can still freeze his access, lock down your assets, sue him privately, and, depending on how public you want this, destroy his reputation." I looked at Alyssa. She looked relieved. Later, in the parking lot, we stood under the gray afternoon sky. Alyssa lit a cigarette, hands trembling. "I haven't smoked in 4 years," she said, "but somehow today feels like an exception." I smiled faintly. "I used to sneak them in the laundry room. David never knew." She laughed, real, broken, honest. "We're not that different, are we?" "No," I said. "We just loved the same mistake." She handed me the flash drive again. "I'm filing for divorce this week. Quietly. He won't see it coming." "What about the money?" "Let him keep it," she said. "Let it rot in his hands. I want peace." I nodded, but I didn't want peace. Not yet. That night, I printed every document, organized everything by date, by signature, by offense. I put them in a leather binder, the same one David used for his taxes. Then I took the contractor's estimate, the original, and slid it into the front pocket. $12,000. The price of a roof. The price of betrayal. The cost of finally saying, no more. Alyssa reveals Daniel used her name, too, for financial schemes, and is preparing to divorce him. She gives Margaret full legal evidence of his actions, shifting the power dynamic entirely. On Monday morning, I wore lipstick. Not a loud color, just something with dignity. I made 4 phone calls before 10 a.m., canceled the power of attorney, froze all joint accounts, locked down the old investment profile David had opened for emergencies, removed Daniel's name from every remaining document tied to my estate. It took 1 hour to undo what he'd spent 6 years building behind my back. The bank manager said, "I'm so sorry this happened to you, Mrs. Hayes." I said, "So am I," and meant it. The binder sat on the passenger seat like a co-pilot, a weapon. I didn't take it to the police. Not yet. Instead, I made copies and mailed one to myself, certified. One to Michelle, the lawyer. One to a safe deposit box downtown I hadn't touched in years. Control felt like air. I hadn't breathed like this in months. Daniel texted me at 4:03 p.m. "Hey, I'm getting some weird bank notifications. You around?" I didn't reply. At 4:17 p.m., he called. I let it ring. At 5:02 p.m., he was at my door. He didn't knock, just opened it like always. "Mom?" he called, already walking in. "Why are the accounts locked? What the hell is going on?" I met him in the hallway, calm, binder in hand. "You forged my name, used me to build your future, then told me you couldn't help me fix a roof." His face changed. First confusion, then recognition, then fear. "I was going to explain." "You had years to explain," I said. "You chose silence." He looked at the binder. "What's that?" "Proof." "Proof of what?" I stepped forward. "That I gave you every chance to do the right thing. And now, I'm done giving." His voice cracked. "Mom, please, let's talk. You don't have to do this." "You're right," I said. "I don't have to. I want to." He reached for my arm. I pulled back. "You taught me that control is love, remember?" I said. "Now I'm learning to love myself." He stood there, speechless. And for the first time, I realized something. He wasn't a monster. He was a child in a man's skin, entitled, unaccountable, soft-spined under the polish. And I'd built him that way. But now, I was rebuilding me. The sun was setting behind the maple trees, and the porch was bathed in gold. The same porch where I used to sit with a book while Daniel played with sidewalk chalk, asking me questions about clouds and bugs and how to make spaghetti without burning it. He stood there now, taller, older, well-dressed. But the boy was gone. "You've made your point," he said. "You've humiliated me." "I haven't even started," I replied, voice low. He laughed bitterly. "You always loved punishing me when you got your feelings hurt." "This isn't about feelings," I said. "It's about consequences." Daniel stepped forward. "You've always needed control, Mom. You just didn't like when I finally learned how to take it back." I felt a flicker of rage, yes, but also grief. "You didn't take it back," I said. "You stole it, quietly, and then blamed me for not giving more." He ran a hand through his hair. "I thought if I made enough money, you'd be proud." "I was proud when you were decent," I said, "before the suits. Before the lying, before you started calling manipulation strategy." A car drove by. A dog barked. We stood in silence for a beat that felt like 20 years. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said finally. "It just got out of hand." "That's what addicts say," I whispered, "and men who cheat, and children who take what doesn't belong to them." He looked away. Then, "Alyssa left." "I know. She's going to ruin me." "She's going to save herself," I said. "I suggest you do the same." Daniel's eyes welled, but he didn't cry. "Is this it?" he asked. "You're done with me?" I stepped forward, touched his arm. "I'm not done loving you," I said. "But I'm done letting love excuse what you've done." He broke then. Not loud, not dramatic, just a long exhale, and a face that finally looked like a child again. A child who'd lost something he didn't know how to name. He nodded, stepped back, walked down the porch steps, slow, uncertain. When he reached the sidewalk, he turned once. I didn't wave. The contractor came Tuesday morning. They finished the job in 3 days. The shingles matched the old ones perfectly, and the drip near the hallway stopped. I didn't hover. I just let them do their work. When they left, I stood outside for 10 minutes, just listening to the silence. No leak, no lies, no begging. I bought a new chair. Nothing fancy. Second-hand, soft blue, curved back. I placed it in the front room, by the window where the light hits just right in the afternoon. A chair just for me, not a shared space, not for guests, not for watching over anyone else. A chair for stillness. I didn't hear from Daniel for a week. Then a letter came. Typed, signed at the bottom. A mixture of apology, explanation, regret. He blamed no one. He asked for nothing. He ended with, "I don't know how to come back from this, but if ever you want me to try, I will." I folded the letter gently, placed it in the back of the drawer with the others. Not out of cruelty, but preservation. Sometimes healing means leaving things untouched. Alyssa moved to Portland. She sent a postcard. "I'm sleeping through the night now. I think that counts for something." I think it does too. Sometimes I sit in my new chair with a cup of tea and no clock in sight. No buzzing phone. No guilt. Just wind. Just light. Just me. There's no dramatic ending. No arrest. No courtroom. No redemption arc on cue. There's just an older woman who finally remembered. She doesn't have to be needed to be whole. And that's enough.